A lot of Floyd fans are going to have their favorite albums, their top 5, whatever you want to call it. For me, one of those favorites isn't even an album at all. It's a concert film called Live at Pompeii. I love this film so much that I actually went to Pompeii to film video for my Elements piece, standing in the same spot where PinkFloyd once played.
Perpetually turning like the waves of the ocean. The hands of the artist have been worked to the bone.
I even had the camera spin around me to recreate those kind of shots they get in the film. Needless to say, this may possibly be my favorite concert film of all time. I mean, other contenders would include Woodstock, Gimme Shelter, The Last Waltz, even Nirvana's Live at the Paramount. Hell, Peter Jackson's recent revision of the Beatles' Rooftop concert was amazing to see. But Live at Pompeii is its own unique piece of art. I've never seen anything like it. I mentioned before performing at Cafe Wa, where we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Live at Pompeii, playing nearly the entire concert. Yeah, we didn't have a dog to cover Mademoiselle Nobs. Sorry, completionists. PinkFloyd's music here is sublime. I've already mentioned this in previous videos, but I'd argue that every performance in this concert is the definitive version, even though I love the studio versions from Metal. But outside of the performance, the atmosphere of the ancient Roman amphitheater of Pompeii is just the perfect vibe for this music. Not to mention that there's no audience. Yeah, you heard me right. The idea was conceived by director Adrian Maben, who had the idea of doing an anti-Woodstock film,
where there would be nobody present, and the music and the silence and the empty amphitheater would mean as much, if not more, than a million crowd.
On paper, this might have been perceived as the most pretentious disaster of a film, but it turned out brilliant. For those who don't know, Pompeii was an ancient Roman city located near a volcano called Vesuvius, which erupted and buried the city alive in 79 AD. Since its excavation, Pompeii is pretty much a time portal to this site of great architecture. Standing in the majestic amphitheater was truly a surreal experience. But in actuality, getting a shot without a crowd was much tougher. Pompeii's very much a tourist spot. What's also fun is that inside the amphitheater, they play the film. They've got PinkFloyd Live at Pompeii playing on a TV right here, like a museum. It's freaking awesome. See, there's Rick. There's Rick again, there's Dave. See, they know that this is an awesome movie. As the film opens, they mimic the sound of a heartbeat, much like they would do on Dark Side of the Moon, which adds to the tension. These eerie still shots of the ruins of Pompeii really provide this sense of isolation. I can't think of a more fitting setting for echoes. And sure enough, the opening ping is played and we get this long zoom shot, giving us the scale of this empty concert. Interspersed shots of ancient sculptures and architecture really make you feel like Floyd is performing for the ghosts of the past. And then to see Rick and Dave singing into their mics is definitely something to behold. I'm usually not a fan of these really close shots they got in the 60s, but it works really well here. This performance is top tier for me, and while there is some overdubbing and editing going on, it's still for the most part being performed live. From their harmonies to Roger's cutting bass tone, David's fuzz guitar, it's all perfectly executed. And the cinematography continues with these long tracking shots, especially during the funk jam where we slowly reveal the band members in all their 1971 glory. Dave's looking pretty sexy without his shirt on. And interesting enough, they opened and closed this concert with echoes, kind of similar to what they would do with Sean and You Crazy Diamond on Wish You Were Here. It should be noted that there were several issues that arose from this shoot, mostly due to a lack of power in getting the equipment to work. So what was supposed to be a 6-day shoot turned into a 3-day one, and they were forced to perform the remaining parts of their set in Paris. You'll notice Rick doesn't have a beard in these shots. Because of this, they tried to compensate for the lack of Pompeii footage by filming the band in front of these screen projections, which kinda date the film. There's a few of these early 70s primitive effects that look kinda hokey, but considering what they had to work with at the time, it's forgivable. Probably one of the most glaring issues is that lack of coverage in some of these performances. On one of these days, we have shots of Nick Mason, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It just focuses on Nick. Even his own band, Saucerful of Secrets, has a video of them performing at the Roundhouse, and there's still not as many shots of him. Come on, Nick, I want the authentic Pompeii experience of only seeing you in these shots. I've heard a couple different reasons for this, that they had these shots and simply lost them, or maybe they were all so baked they just filmed this way thinking it was far out, man. But regardless, this is still a rockin' performance, even more so than the original. And it does show off what a powerhouse drummer Nick is. One of my favorite moments is when he loses his stick and grabs another one without missing a beat. Something they probably would have covered up had they had more coverage, but seeing this really gives you a glimpse into Pink Floyd's raw musicianship. And man, did they make up for the cinematography on A Saucerful of Secrets. They filmed it in the late afternoon when the sun just gave this majestic glow. You get to see all band members doing their respective thing, and when Roger hits that gong, this is one of the coolest shots I've ever seen in my life. I think it's also because of the visuals that this is my favorite rendition of Saucerful. Now I know I was hard on the studio disc and I didn't give as much love to the Amagama version, but this is truly an experience to behold. The interplay between them is what sets the dynamics and perfectly displays that free-form vibe they were initially going for back in 1968. And when Rick moves over to those organ chords, it sends a chill down your spine. The band joining in for the Celestial Voices section adds so many more dynamics, and, well, it's really now down to one celestial voice from Dave, but I think it works even better. There's two more cuts from 1968. Careful with That Axe Eugene and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun were both filmed in Paris, but they still take advantage of the atmosphere with lights, camera movements, and interspersed shots of Roman artwork. Careful with That Axe friggin' rocks. Rather than just randomly placing that scream like on the record or even Amagama, they build up to it. I also love how Roger teases the title. There's so much tension, and when Roger finally lets it rip, cued by a banging fill from Nick, god damn. Same thing with Set the Controls, they just have it down by now. That breakdown featuring Rick's haunting chords and Dave's slide will make you feel high just listening to it. It's really when we performed this live and Dino Cavelli, our keyboardist, sent me the chords that I realized what a genius Rick was. This is why I can't listen to any other version of the song. Rick's chord sequence with the accompanying soundscapes makes Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun an epic classic. And then at the end, we get a return to Echoes Part 2, the sun rising back as Rick's 4-chord sequence brings us to the climax of the tune. What a brilliant concert. Now it should be mentioned there's a couple different versions of this concert. The original 1972 version is how I like to watch it. It's presented in the original aspect ratio, so you get to see everything as it was originally filmed and edited. But Maben decided to also film some studio footage of the band at Abbey Road when they just happened to be working on Dark Side of the Moon. One of the most fortunate coincidences ever. It really is amazing to see this footage of Roger working out the synths on the Run, David playing guitar parts for Brain Damage, Rick's piano on Us and Them, and Nick wanting some pie without crust.
I'd like some pie and not the crust.
See, Mom, I'm not the only one who doesn't eat my crust. It's also interesting to hear these interviews of them discussing underlying issues with the band, knowing what would happen in the years to come.
We're very tolerant with each other, but there are a lot of things unsaid as well.
Unfortunately, the director's cut from 2002 also includes a lot of dated-looking CGI, which really takes you out of the film, even more so than the dated effects of the 70s footage. It makes me wonder if George Lucas had something to do with it. I kind of wish they would just keep the original film as it was and maybe intersperse some of the studio footage between the songs. But whatever way you choose to experience life at Pompeii, it's still a masterpiece, and thankfully, they've released them as audio tracks, which you can check out on streaming services. It's also kind of a shame that this would be one of the last professionally shot videos we'd see of Pink Floyd for over half a decade. Yeah, no professionally shot footage exists of them during the Dark Side of the Moon tour, Wish You Were Here tour, or even the famous Animals tour with the flying pig and everything. Well, thankfully we have this work of art as a time capsule of Pink Floyd's peak. Well, I'm technically breaking a rule by including this live concert film in the official lineup. I just can't help but do so, and it gets a goldfish, no contest. The essential track has to be their rendition of Echoes, which is presented in its full form on streaming services. But definitely check out the full concert. Careful with that axe, one of these days, set the controls. And it goes without saying that the visuals are a must-see as well. We've got one more detour before we get to Dark Side of the Moon, and we'll talk about it next time.